Hi, I'm Virginia from Right Clinic, and here with me today is Vicky Sherwood, who is a freelance medical writer and founder of Biomed Badass, which helps STEM professionals switch career from academia into pharma, or if you're already in the pharma industry, then growing your career in pharma or moving departments. So thank you so much, Vicky, for being here today.
Hi, Virginia. Great to meet you.
Yeah, great to meet you too. We did have a chat before we filmed this, so we've got loads of really interesting things to discuss and share. And so the first question is, what are you doing right now as a freelance medical writer, and how did you get into it?
Sure. Well, I'm really grateful to be invited on your podcast, Virginia. I know you've had it
Thank
up
you.
and running for a few months, so I'm sure it's going to grow from strength to strength because I've seen some of the guests you've had on. It's really exciting people in the medical writing field. So, how did I get into medical writing? I'm sorry, this is a bit of a long story, but I'll try and keep it nice and short. So I was a career academic for many, many years, and I loved science. I loved science at school. I went to university, ended up doing PhD, stayed on, got a fellowship, did some postdocs abroad. By the way, science is a really great career if you want to work abroad and move around. I found it really easy I lived in the States, I lived in different countries in Europe. And then I returned to the UK and set up my own lab, which was a really exciting time. Loved working with young researchers and growing the team. Really, really enjoyed that aspect of the work and was really passionate about the science that we were doing as well. So we were looking at metastatic skin cancers and working out, new targets for therapeutics. So it was really interesting, really exciting time. But the academic system, particularly in the UK at the time when I was starting up my lab, became quite challenging in terms of getting funding and being able to grow the lab and support the lab. And over that time, I found that I was doing less and less of the really exciting, interesting stuff, which was the actual, bench work and going to the conferences and talking about the work and helping the team, and more kind of the admin and getting the money in and supporting the team. And it would really panic me. I would honestly say I would lay awake at night and think, my postdoc's just gone and bought a house, and we've only got a couple of years funding left on their program. And what if we don't get the results and we don't get the extension for the next 3 years? And I just had a bit of a revelation and thought, I don't think I can do this till I'm 65. It was really, really taxing. And I think a lot of people in science think, oh, I just want to become a PI. I want that role because, that's basically what they see everybody doing that same role. But actually, it's not right for everyone, I think. And if I'd have thought about what I actually was good at as a scientist, I probably would not have gone down that route. Because whilst I liked research and I felt I was quite good at research, what I was actually really good at was writing up the papers, going to the conferences, putting the PowerPoint presentation together and telling a story about the science we were doing. And in hindsight, I wish I'd actually taken some time and done some introspective work and thought about my career and what I enjoyed doing. So I'd reached this kind of crossroads, if you like, in my career. And I thought, I can't keep doing this, I don't think, but I don't know what else I want to do. So I decided to hit LinkedIn. I wasn't really actively using LinkedIn as an academic back then. And I don't think many academics were using it because I saw it as a professional network for finding jobs, basically. And as academics, we don't really use that platform to find jobs. Well, we didn't, at least back then, when I was making a transition. So I started using it and I started thinking, well, I need to reach out to people in pharma, because from the work we were doing, obviously it was, translational work. And I was interested in still helping patients and thinking about ways in which we could, progress science, medical science. So I started reaching out to people in pharma, and I just basically said, have you got, 15, 20 minutes? I can just ask you about your job. And it was surprising how many people actually gave me that time. It was really nice. And I spoke to people who were working in sales, people working in R&D, people working in recruitment, all sorts of departments, regulatory affairs, medical affairs. And then eventually I ended up speaking to a lady who was basically a medical writer working in an agency that was supporting Big Pharma. And she was telling me, what she does. So basically, she writes publications, she writes PowerPoint slides for presentations. She works with HCPs, healthcare professionals, to help them go to, scientific meetings and, what to talk about and think about, all the kind of scientific events that HCPs are involved in. And she worked across this broad spectrum. And I thought, these are all the things I love to do. And from then I started speaking to more medical writers, and I thought, wow, I can't believe, you can get paid to do this. I'm going to make the career transition. And that's kind of how I got into medical writing, through talking to people, networking, word of mouth. And eventually through talking to people, I got introduced to decision makers. And those decision makers invited me to submit a CV, and gave me an opportunity to go in and learn the ropes. And I ended up at an agency in London, where it was a fantastic agency, and I kind of learned all the kind of ground skills needed to be an effective medical communications medical writer, which is my area of expertise. So sorry, I know I promised I would only give 2-minute answers to you, Virginia, but I've given you like a 10-minute answer. But that's how I kind of broke in. So my advice to anyone out there who's thinking about maybe a career change, or thinking about, what they should do next if they've come to a T-junction like me, is really take some time to do that introspective work and think about, what it is about your current job that you enjoy, and what you would like to take forward, and what you would rather leave behind, potentially. And I think that's a really good way of then knowing, areas that will work for you, and then talking to people in a particular sector, or even just alumni from the university or the school you were studying in, just learning more about their jobs and what they do. And eventually you might, like me, stumble across something that just fits the bill perfectly.
Yeah, that's amazing. No, I think there's so much value and wisdom in what you've said. So that, going over time is not really over time, it's overvalue. That's how I so get value for your minutes there. So I wanted to ask you, you've been a freelancer for a number of years now, and you also you've done lots of different types of medical writing, and one of the really common questions that people ask is, what are the different types of medical writing, and what are your experiences of those different types of medical writing? So which ones do you prefer, which ones do you enjoy? And then, how would you kind of recommend that people go about trying those different types of medical writing? So for example, for me, I'm more on the creative marketing side and haven't really done much regulatory, just as an example. So
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah. So as I mentioned, so medical communications, or medcoms, was what I originally got into. So it's a very broad area of medical writing, but it's usually around the communications externally with stakeholders. There's some internal communication work as well that goes on, but a lot of the time it's publications, it's scientific events, but it's also getting insights as well from the healthcare community into the pharma company. So there's lots of different things you could work on. So manuscripts, publications, abstracts, advisory boards, scientific symposia, conferences. It's a really diverse area. So that's kind of where I started. And it's a good place to start in a way, because a lot of the agencies are broad spectrum and they'll offer all these services. And if you can get into one of those that's then quite open to giving you different types of projects, you can taste a lot of different things. So that's a really good, I felt that was a really good way of starting. And I ended up as well also getting my hands on some regulatory writing work. So regulatory is more kind of writing clinical study reports, safety updates, application submission dossiers to companies like, sorry, my phone was ringing there, Virginia, I apologize. So to the agencies like the FDA or the EMA, and some post-marketing documentation as well that's needed. So regulatory writers are really, it's more kind of, it's for the regulatory department, but it's very kind of a little bit more prescriptive kind of writing, but very science focused, very focused on the data. So I think if you prefer kind of the more science-heavy, science-focused work, I think regulatory or med comms on the side of like publications and looking at clinical trials and data from that, that's kind of the more the area you'd like. If you like a little bit more kind of the creative side, there are areas of medical communications that will enable you to work on that kind of more creative side, maybe in medical education or helping the design team, I don't know, design like a symposia at a conference or something like that. But there's also, you can get more into the kind of commercial side of medical writing, which is, I think, some of the stuff you were saying that you're into, Virginia. So more kind of writing websites, writing social media posts, these types of things. So, and then you can work quite closely as well with creative, so designers and creative studio departments, and really help on that side of things. So if it's a little bit more creative, I think I would move more towards kind of the commercial writing and the more creative side of medcoms as well. And then there are other types of medical writing as well. So there's market access. So this is really concerned with the accessibility that patients have to new medicines, new devices. So it tends to involve kind of economic evaluation, patient outcome research, and how accessible new products coming to the market are going to be for different patient groups in different geographies. So that's got a little bit more kind of, I guess, an economic financial edge to it as well. I've never worked in that area, but talking to people who do that, that's the impression I get. And then there's some people that focus specifically on writing grants as well. So grant writing medical writers, who would submit grants to help them, maybe get a new product or medical device tested. So yeah, there's lots and lots of different types of medical writing. And I think when you first think about you'd like to use your scientific training as a writer, I'll become a medical writer. It's not always that obvious, I think, to begin with when you start investigating, what the different types are. People definitely specialize into these different areas. And there are more than the ones I mentioned as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's really interesting to hear your kind of experience of kind of jumping between different types of medical writing. And then also you mentioned in our conversation earlier that you're doing some PR stuff and you're really enjoying it, which is really exciting.
Yeah, I am.
And
so that's more into like the commercial side again. So yeah, that's kind of a new avenue for me, and that's one of the benefits of working as a freelance as well. You can try some of these different things as well if they happen to come your way, and have a go at them. I should also mention, actually, if any of your audience, speak more than one language, another area of medical writing, which is not accessible for me because really, being English, I'm only very good at English. But medical translation. So if you know any other languages, having knowledge of translation and linguistics, you can use that in medical writing as well. All these kind of documents that medical writers are writing for, say, global pharma might then need to be translated into specific languages for, different geographies. So that's another area of speciality that I see a lot of people with scientific training go into, but who can also speak multiple languages.
yeah, so there's lots of opportunities out there. And so for people who are just looking to get into it, what would you say is your, 2 top tips that they absolutely have to do before they, even think about getting into medical writing?
I think I've maybe touched on them, so I'll just quickly reiterate. But firstly, I think really think about what it is that you enjoy doing. What is it about? Because I do think you need to enjoy writing, and you need to enjoy learning and reading about science, and specifically medical science and medical developments, to really get the most out of this career. I think if you didn't enjoy those things, you would find it a struggle to day in, day out, read about advances in the field and then sit and write about them. I think it would be challenging. So I definitely think you've got to know that you're interested in learning and reading about science, medical science. And then if you are one of those people who enjoy science and enjoy communications, because it is not for everyone, I have to say, then start talking to people, which is exactly what I did. Start looking for people on LinkedIn. So a really good tip is to use the alumni tool and look at, so you go to basically the university you studied at, hit the alumni tab, and then put in medical writer, and it'll pull up anybody who went to your schools. And that's a really quick in, because you just say, oh, we've got the same educational background, we studied at the same school, and I see you're a medical writer. I'd love to learn more about medical writing. Could you spare 10, 15 minutes and tell me more about your career? And I think that's really important for a couple of reasons. Firstly, because you're doing some research and you're learning about the different types of medical writing that are out there in a little bit more detail, but also because you're starting to build that network of writers that eventually will become your future role network when you become a medical writer. And particularly if you do end up freelancing, once you've got that largest network, if you keep nurturing it, then they are going to be your leads. They're going to be your client leads potentially, and help you find work as you need to and progress your career. So those would be my top 2 tips. Is don't be afraid to talk to people. You'd be surprised how many people are willing to talk to you, but also evaluate whether or not, as you have those conversations, whether or not you feel that type of work is going to be right for you. And that is difficult to say, because obviously you don't know until you try often. But if you're not someone who likes to do a lot of reading, or likes to sit down and tackle a PowerPoint presentation or a 30-page document, then I really would suggest that medical writing is probably not for you, even though it offers great flexibility, remuneration, and all these things that I think are attracting people to the career. But your career has to work for you, otherwise it's just going to be an uphill battle, I think.
Yeah, great advice. I think
Mm-hmm.
your wisdom and experience definitely speaks a lot there to, figuring out if it's right for you, maybe trying a little bit of it to see if you can actually tackle it and get it done before you really commit to transitioning into,
Mm-hmm.
transitioning your career in that direction. So final question, what's next on the horizon for you?
Well, at the minute, as you said, I'm freelancing, so taking on some exciting new work with a new client for the rest of the year, so the last quarter of the year. So that'll be cool. And then from the blog that I write, Biomed Badass, I'm going to be starting a webinar series. So look out on LinkedIn, because I'm going to be posting about those, just to try and educate people a little bit more about the wider issues within pharma, and things that we need to be thinking about, both as people who are aspirational and want to get into pharma, and also people who are trying to progress their careers in that industry. And I post content regularly, lots of free resources about medical writing, about other types of pharma careers, people who have transitioned within pharma, or transitioned out of, say, other areas, so public sector work, like academia, like the healthcare industry, into pharma. So if you're interested in that, do subscribe, because I share a lot of this via email. So the subscription link, I'm sure you'll share with everybody, Virginia, but it's basically www.biomedbadass.com/subscribe, and you'll get all that content straight into your inbox, all free. And yeah, it's a growing community, so we'll just see where it goes next year. It started as just an organic project that I did as in my free time, because I was having a lot of people reaching out to me, asking me about my career when I made the transition from academia, and it's just grown from there. So yeah, it's a community of over 3,500 subscribers now, and I love interacting with people there, so I'm open to questions. And whenever I get questions, that gives me new insight of new material that I need to cover, to help people, navigate their career, and navigate working in biopharma.
Yeah, amazing. So you can learn a lot from Vicky and all of her experiences, and also, you know, the kind of community as well, chipping in to ask questions and her sharing her knowledge and all the answers to those questions. So I'll leave links in the description below, so you can subscribe, and also to connect with Vicky as well on LinkedIn. So she's very active on LinkedIn. I love her content as well. And yeah, I guess that's a wrap. Thank you so much, Vicky, for this episode.
Thanks so much, Virginia. It's great to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Great. Always a pleasure, and see you at the next episode. Bye.
Bye.